If you clicked on this video, you're likely aware of the greatness that is the band Ween. If you're not, then hopefully this can be a good introduction for you. They're one of, if not my favorite band of all time. They're truly one of a kind. And though they made quite a lot of music, it is sad that their music making time seems to have ended after a relatively short 17 years. Still, they released 10 studio albums in that time, and they're all at least pretty great, which is what makes album rankings of theirs so fun. If you go on Reddit and look at Ween album rankings, you'll see that there isn't really any standard tiers that the albums are put in, so I think Ween Discourse is a fun one to contribute to. I feel like I should say this is just my opinion, but like, what else would it be? I should also mention that I am including Shinola Volume 1. It is kind of a compilation album, but it was recorded and put together as a studio album, so in my mind it counts. And more importantly, I think it can be compared to the others. If there is an album that is consistently ranked in a lower tier than other Ween albums, it is probably the Cucaracha. It's not a bad album by any means, but it doesn't have the creative spark that every other Ween album has, in my opinion. It's sort of hard to pinpoint how, considering that the album is on face very eclectic and creative. There's a lot of different styles, types of songs, clear experimentation, but it feels like they're experimenting for the sake of it instead of having a clear creative vision. Case in point, the song Spirit Walker, which features use of autotune for no other reason than just to use autotune, at least how it feels to me. That being said, the album is mostly pleasant and can be pretty fun. Fiesta is a fun instrumental opener, Blue Balloon is pretty quirky in a fun way, Friends has some nice synths. I think Object is a legitimately great song, and Your Party is a nice enough closer. But yeah, overall, it's fine, but when we're talking about Ween, that's almost the worst insult I can give. Now don't get me wrong, despite this being my number 9, I have tremendous respect for this album. There's a term in the Ween community called brown, if you're not familiar, which is basically something that sounds pretty bad, but that's kind of the point. And this album is exactly that. It pretty much sounds like shit almost for the sake of it. Obviously they had low resources as well, but there are many production choices on this album that seem very intentional. You will never hear another album that sounds like this, and if you do, it will not be to the caliber that Ween have done it. This album is textbook inaccessible, it's a mess, but it's a beautiful mess. It also clocks in at almost 77 minutes, which makes listening to it all the way through quite the experience. I think an important piece of context to mention is that when they were recording this album, at least for much of it, they were sick with mono, which I think is heavily apparent in many of the songs, and especially the recording quality of this album. This album really feels like being sick with a fever and just feeling gross, or like you haven't showered in a week and just feel grimy. But beneath its rough exterior, there are quite a few gems. Dr. Rock is a banger, Frank has great guitar parts, Sorry Charlie is an in and out great song, and you can't talk about the pod without mentioning The Stallion Part 1, because boy, this song is ear rape before it was cool. Pollo Asado is another classic of a guy ordering Mexican food while a pretty catchy and chill guitar riff plays under it. And this album has several sonic peaks where, despite its lo-fi sound, things get really loud and intense. It's interesting though, because you really have to wait and listen for them. Like the song Laura, which at first with its weird tangy vocals will probably turn off the average listener, but if you wait and listen, the chorus is actually pretty cool. This also happens on Demon Sweat and Don't Sweat It. Awesome Sound is hilarious. Mononucleosis is another legitimately great song, so is Oh My Dear Falling in Love and Pork Roll, Egg and Cheese. You might be thinking, wow, this is a lot of praise for an album that's second to the bottom. And that's true, but the reason it places so low is because just on a pure enjoyment level, when it comes to the auditory experience, I don't love listening to this album. Sure, it has bangers, but it also has songs like She Fucks Me and Boing, which are just like, what the hell? I also think that even if the recording quality was better, there are plenty of songs on here that are just kind of filler and wouldn't be that good anyways, which isn't that surprising considering that there are 22 songs. But yeah, this album is certainly a must listen if you want to get into Ween. I am putting this one above the pod, but barely. I think it barely inches it out just because I overall enjoy listening to it more. That sounds absurd because obviously that's why I put an album above another, but I think there's more to enjoying Ween's music than simply the auditory experience. I think this album has some great standout tracks with a few okay ones as well. I do really like the production and overall sound this album has. It's hard to pinpoint, but it does have its own unique sound despite the songs all being from different eras. Boys Club is pretty fun. I Fell in Love Today has a great vibe. Gabrielle is fantastic, has great guitar work and an amazing chorus. Did You See Me is a great standout. Amazing build, great melody in the verse, great staccato guitar instrumental afterwards. It's one of my favorite Ween songs. Transitions is another favorite of mine. Amazing guitar work and nice chill verses. The Rift is nice and psychedelic. Monique the Freak is a surprisingly catchy and well done dance song. And Someday is a really calming, beautiful closing track. I definitely like some songs more than others, but overall it's a good Ween album. Now we're at the point in the list where every album, in my opinion, is fantastic, and we're starting with their very first one. This is another very long one with 26 songs, 29 if you count the bonus tracks, which I do think are pretty good, but most of them are pretty short with a few pretty major exceptions. This album can also be pretty hard to listen to, but if you're in the right mood, it's pretty amazing. The songs are punky and aggressive while also being totally absurd. I definitely think this is Ween's funniest album because you got songs like Fat Lenny and Cold and Wet and Nan, which are all hilarious. And this album is just ridiculously entertaining. It just does not stop hitting you song after song with the most absurd and passionate performances surrounding the most ridiculous things. Something interesting though is that the last bit of the album definitely mellows out a lot more, like Birthday Boy onward, it's definitely a lot chiller. And there are a few exceptions to the very loud and aggressive way that I've been characterizing this album in the first bit as well. And there's some good exceptions to that rule, but overall I do prefer the more ridiculous tone that the first part of the album has. I will highlight Birthday Boy though, as that is a personal favorite of mine. I would list more songs, but there are just so many great standouts and I kind of like them all for almost the same reason, so it just feel a little redundant. The reason to place this a bit lower is because you do have to be in a particular mood to listen to it, and some of the songs are pretty harsh. It's certainly brown, but in a slightly more accessible way, but still something that if you were to play to someone who's unacquainted with Ween, they'd probably ask you to turn off. Overall though, fantastic album. This is the last of Ween's first 3 albums that really encapsulate brown. It's not quite as rough as the pop, but it definitely has its moments. I mean, the song Morning Glory, like, what the hell? Still, I think this is the perfect type of brown. It's pretty rough in the recording, but it's still hilarious and super entertaining. There are just so many Ween classics on this album. Little Birdie is hilarious. The Stallion Part 3 is, in my opinion, just like perfect, weird, acquired taste Ween. Big Jim was one of the first Ween songs I ever heard when I was really young, and I still love it. Push the Little Daisies is Ween's first signal, and I think it's another one that you kind of have to get accustomed to after a few listens, but once you do, it's really great. I would list more songs, but it would pretty much just be the entire album, and I also like a lot of them for the same reasons, because they're just really entertaining and fun. What I'll say is that this album, if I'm in the right mood, brings me such joy because it's just so silly. It's perfect weird Ween. Honestly, the only reason it places at the bottom half is because I think that the next 5 albums on this list are just so good. And you know, it definitely has its moments that are a bit hard to listen to, but the parts that are good, which is most of the album, is some of the best Ween there is. Here we have Ween's country album, 12 Golden Country Greats, despite there only being 10 songs. Yes, Ween is responsible for what, in my opinion, is one of the only good country albums ever. It has great production and some pretty serious moments, but for the most part, it's all pretty silly. They brought in a ton of country musicians for this album, and the result is a very eclectic array of instruments: harmonica, slide guitar, fiddle, classical piano, as well as, of course, acoustic guitar. It's everything you'd expect from a country album, but with classic Ween branding. It's almost like a parody of country music, while also just being a legitimately great country album. But, you know, you have songs like I Don't Want to Leave You on the Farm, and Piss Up a Rope, and Help Me Scrape the Mucus Off My Brain, and Japanese Cowboy, which do feel like parodies of country music. But then you have Pretty Girl, Powder Blue, I'm Holding You, You Were the Fool, which do feel a bit more genuine, though still pretty silly at times. Every song on here is really great, though. We managed to pull off a great album in a genre they had hardly explored before, which I think showcases why they're such a great band. Now we're on to some of my favorite albums of all time. White Pepper is for sure Ween's most accessible album, but I don't see that as a bad thing whatsoever. Rather, I think it's Ween exploring a more traditional pop rock, sometimes psychedelic sound, and just doing it fantastically. It showcases that Ween can and will do anything and do it well. Despite this, it's still somewhat eclectic. Like, each song has its own sound, you never mistake one for another. Despite this, it's definitely Ween's most consistent album in my opinion. The songs Exactly Where I'm At and Flutes of Chi are some of my favorite songs ever. Exactly Where I'm At is just really beautiful, great instrumental, super psychedelic, and just really nice. And Flutes of Chi is just so joyful and happy. Like, you can't not feel good listening to this song. Even If You Don't is an awesome pop song. Bananas and Blow is a nice tropical vibe to it, is also really catchy. Stroke Race is a nice fiery rock song. Ice Castles is really cool sounding with its mellotrons and synth sounds. The Grove is a great rock song. Stay Forever is a beautiful love song. Falling Out is great folk rock. And She's Your Baby is just another nice, really pretty closing track. I love this album. I think it's beautiful and has some of the best production choices of any Ween album. It still has Ween's classic silliness at times, so it's still definitely Ween. But it's albums like this that make Ween such a fun band to explore the discography of, because going from an album like Pure Guava to this will give you whiplash, and I think that's part of what makes Ween great. If I had to give it a reason for being lower than other albums, it's because it is a tad less entertaining in my opinion, and I also think there's another album in Ween's discography that I'll get to later that kind of does what this album does, but a bit better in my opinion. But overall, nothing but positive things to say. I know, number 3 seems a little low for this classic. And all I can really say is that the 2 albums above it are just so great. The Molsk, though, is probably Ween's most conceptual album. It has a very nautical theme that's exemplified in its more synthesizers, acoustic guitar, occasional reverby electric guitar, as well as some of the hand percussion. It makes the album feel like it's either underwater in like Atlantis or on a pirate ship, and it's just a really cool vibe. It has some really great psychedelic moments with songs like It's Gonna Be Alright and Mutilated Lips, as well as parts of other songs as they build, like Cold Blows the Wind. It doesn't sacrifice Ween classic tongue-in-cheek silliness on the songs I'm Dancing in the Show Tonight and Waving My Dick in the Wind, and it even gets a little brown on Pink Eye on My Leg. And I think the run of songs after this is some of the best Ween ever. Already mentioned Waving My Dick in the Wind, which is a classic. Buckingham Green is one of my all-time favorite Ween songs. The acoustic guitar solos and the build to the electric solo is just so epic and orgasmic. It has so much might and feels so dramatic despite the lyrics being, like, as far as I can tell, pretty much meaningless. Ocean Man is kind of a meme, but that doesn't mean it's not one of Ween's best. And She Wanted to Leave is a great tale of a groomer who has his love taken away from him and finds out that she in fact never loved him back. I also think I should mention the bonus bit of this song, which is a slowed down version of I'm Dancing in the Show Tonight, and it actually is surprisingly sad. It feels like the main character, if she wanted to leave, going to a bar on the ship afterwards, feeling all depressed. There are some songs I'm not mentioning, but just know I think they're all great. This is a fantastic album, and there's a reason it's a fan favorite. Quebec has seriously grown on me over the years. It has its silly moments, but for the most part, the album is very mature. And I think it's the closest Ween ever get to making a sort of traditionally great piece of art. I know I'm saying that despite there being songs on here like The Fucked Jam, which, might be one of the worst things I've ever heard. And, there's It's Gonna Be a Long Night and Hey There Fancy Pants and So Many People in the Neighborhood. They're definitely different from the softer, more therapeutic sound that most of the album has. But hey, it's not a Ween album if it isn't at least a bit eclectic. And I do think that It's Gonna Be a Long Night in particular is a great opening track. But then you have the rest of the album, which is some of Ween's best. Zoloft is beautiful and deals with issues of depression, which is pretty obvious given the title, which if you don't know is an antidepressant. Transdermal Celebration is another all-time favorite of mine. It's pretty traditional rock, but it's just so catchy and it gets so beautiful with the build and the electric guitar solo and the synths in the background. Among His Tribe is just so calming and nice. I love the instrumental bit where it gets all layered with the ambient synths, and it's just such a nice song.
I'm realizing editing this, I forgot to mention Tried and True, which is one of my favorite Ween songs. Don't know why I forgot about it, but that's a great one.
Happy Colored Marbles is a little weird, but I do think the chorus is legitimately beautiful. I like to think the song is about antidepressants, where the verses are what it's like to not be on your happy colored marbles, and then the chorus is when you're on them before a complete breakdown at the end where the song gets really hectic. Captain is another super calming, beautiful one. Feels like you're in a daze, lost at sea, begging the captain to take you home, but he can't hear you. Chocolate Town feels like I'm riding around in a fantasy land. I also love the guitar solo on this song. I Don't Want It is incredible. It's so crazy to think they started writing songs like Papa Zit and Bumblebee, and now they're writing legitimately heartbreaking songs about Jeaner's split with his wife, which influences much of the album and is part of why it sounds the way it does. Alkan Road is another very calming, psychedelic one. It does require a bit of patience because it's a bit slow at first, but once you get to the build and everything, it's definitely worth it. And The Argus is just an amazing song. It's so haunting and cold in the first half, but then has like the most beautiful outro that I think is one of the best moments in Ween's entire discography. Like, I could just gush about this song all day. Then finally there's If You Could Save Yourself, You'd Save Us All, which features very passionate vocal performance from Jeaner, also gets to really great peaks. This album is as serious as Ween gets, and on a personal level it just really speaks to me. In a fascinating turnaround of vibe, this is my number one. This album is the first one I ever listened to of Ween, and it really encapsulates what Ween is, in my opinion. Like, when I think of Ween, I think of this album, which is a little weird considering that much of their discography differs from what they're doing on here pretty significantly. This album has 16 songs, and with one exception, the song Candy, which I think is just okay, they're all incredible. It's so eclectic and the songs are so good that it feels more like a compilation album of a very varied band and their greatest hits at the end of their career than it is just another Ween album. I guess I'll go through every song here and what I love about it, because they're all so different and they all have their own unique qualities, and it is my number one, so I think it's worthy of that dissection. Take Me Away is so fun. The guitar riff is so catchy and it feels like I'm at a bar listening to it, especially with the little thank yous and the little tiny claps that they throw in. Spinal Meningitis is definitely as fucked up as Ween gets. I will admit it's pretty funny, and I think it's an all-around good song, especially in the outro, but that doesn't mean I always want to listen to it, depending on my mood. Freedom of 76 is a Ween classic, really chill, great guitar, great unique chord progression. The falsetto Jeaner gets to at the end is bonkers. I can't put my finger on it, it's distorted and aggressive, but also really catchy. I also love the psychedelic interludes that are thrown in there. A Tear for Eddie is a great psychedelic instrumental, has a great end when the distorted guitar comes in and it all gets really intense. Roses Are Free is a personal favorite of mine. It's really catchy and kind of weird, but with a great guitar solo. Baby Bitch is nice and a bit sadistic, with Jeaner fuming over an ex that broke his heart and came back into town like nothing happened. It's the same person he wrote Birthday Boy about. Mr. Would You Please Help My Pony is one of the first Ween songs I ever listened to, and I love it. It exemplifies silly Ween in its true form, but also has a really great instrumental with that weird high-pitched guitar and a really great guitar solo as well. Drifter in the Dark is really nice and calming. Voodoo Lady, another classic, super fun and energetic with a great riff. It gets all distorted in the middle, which is a bit harsh, but also pretty cool. Joppa Road feels like I'm cruising on a road trip in the meadows, going to nowhere. Buenos Tardes, Amigo is a 7-minute epic, tells a great story, which I won't spoil if you haven't listened to it. The HIV song is just fucking stupid, but in the best way. Two really catchy guitar riffs that are only interrupted by AIDS or HIV. What Jeaner Was Talking About is a very genuine song on the album about panic attacks. Apparently Jeaner had them a lot, and Jeaner finally had one and realized what Jeaner was talking about. Don't Shit Where You Eat is a really nice acoustic song with a great core message. Also love the electric guitar solo on the end. It's really nice. This album is near perfect, and I think it shows Ween at their creative peak. It's funny, it's a roller coaster of different styles and genres, and because of that, I think it's their best album. Well, that's it. Let me know in the comments what your rankings are. I expect to see a lot of different ones. And if you're interested in hearing random people on the internet's music, I have links in the description to my first EP. Anyways, that's the video.